All right, 10 minutes away from 7 o'clock. Good to have you with us here on the South African Morning. After 2 decades, 20 years, can you believe it, the Taliban toppled US-led forces and took over Afghanistan. And anyway, could this encourage militants worldwide, more especially militants here in Africa? We know there have been problems, especially quite close to home. Let's not forget what's been happening in northern Mozambique. Researcher Ebrahim Deen penning a piece about the lack of local capacity to stem the growing insurgencies, especially in Sahel. Joining us now. Ebrahim, good morning to you. Thanks very much for your time. I'm going to get your thoughts on Africa in just a moment. I'd like to get your first response on how you think this played out over in Afghanistan with the US suddenly up and leaving the country so quickly.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. You know, it was a surprise even to the Taliban, the speed at which they captured the territory. We all knew that they would eventually capture the territory. If you survived the US at its highest and NATO at its zenith in 2009, 2010, when there were 150,000 troops, 5,000 and 2,000 troops weren't really going to affect you. So the Taliban did wait and already had controlled 40-50% of territory consistently, so it wasn't a surprise. But a big part of us believing this was the fact that they were a locally rooted group with domestic grievances, and I mean, not seen as a terrorist group by the US because of their domestic grievances. And I think herein, if you want to segue to the Africa, herein lies how we need to start viewing militancy in Africa, or at least some militant groupings in Africa.
Well, I'm actually so glad you wanted to segue to that next, but that's exactly where we are going next. So when we talk about the domestic side of this extremism as well and these insurgencies, just tell me about the piece that you wrote. How ready are we for this? How seriously do we take this? Because it all comes off the back of my original question. Now that the Taliban are legitimately in control of Afghanistan, is this going to embolden the local insurgencies in Africa?
Yes, it is. I mean, many of the Middle Eastern groups already sent celebratory, congratulatory messages to the Taliban in Afghanistan. Your Jabha in Syria, your Hamas in Palestine. But in saying so, the bigger issue is in how we view militants, and that's the problem. Is we don't look at the fact that many of these militant groupings are rooted in domestic grievances, and because we don't look in that, we don't deal with them in a way. We just use a security approach, and generally it's prone to failure because look, France is going to pull out of the Sahel in the next couple of months, and they have already been pulling out. There's been 2 coups in Mali, and unless we start taking the domestic grievances seriously, negotiating where possible, we'll actually see and end up with a situation where we're spending money, security, bombs, and the groups only strengthen because it's not, the militancy has roots. Now, I mean, groups such as ISIS or the Islamic State, that may be more international transpositions, but groups such as JNIM in Mali, for example, is very, very locally rooted and actually has expressed its intentions to negotiate with the regime. And, that's something we need to look at, because you want to negotiate from a position of strength rather than when the French are pulling out.
Let's talk, if we could, just in the last minute I have with you, Ebrahim, closer to home. I mentioned Mozambique as well. I just want to just focus on South Africa and this southern region, if we will. We can go as far as SADC if you want to, but the southern regions. Final answer from you. How concerned should we be in South Africa?
Mozambique, I think it's largely limited. The group hasn't carried out any activities here. But also, again, we need to look at the local grievances. So Rwanda has gone in, pushed out many from Cabo Delgado, for example, or at least Masimba Praia, the port city. But again, the Kimwani, are in a region where all the gas in Mozambique is, yet they receive none of the benefits of the gas. All the employment is from foreign companies and Maputo, etc. So unless we start looking at what caused these groups, we're going to see these groups spur up, because obviously it's rebellion. It's not necessarily just militancy. There's a root to it. And I think we need to look at that. So, yes, it's good to use the security approach at times, but we need to be much more broader, much more deeper, and much more nuanced in how we see.
Now, we need to figure out what the reason is that they're springing up, isn't it? Not just try and stop them once they do. Afro-Middle East Centre researcher Ebrahim Deen, thank you very, very much. So, I'm sorry, I actually heard I cut you off there. I didn't mean to. We're going to talk again, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks. Ebrahim Deen from the Afro-Middle East Centre joining us this morning.